Good evening, dear Amayun family. This is Gloria Rudd from the west side of Michigan in the United States, and my husband, who will be speaking right after me. And we are so sad that we cannot be with you all in the Philippines, just to love on you a bit, hug you, and just know that we are praying for you. Raija was such a very special friend. Our times together were never enough time. They were too brief. And we were separated by time and space, and sometimes long times. But when we would get back together, it felt like we had never been apart. I just want to give you a few descriptive words that I feel give a snapshot of this dear, dear woman. The first one is Raija was a guileless person. She did not judge people. She loved them, and she looked at people with the very best eyes. She was curious and intelligent. She was always learning. She was empathetic, not sympathetic, not just sympathetic, but she was empathetic. She was talkative. She was a wonderful conversationalist. We never had enough time to get everything out that we wanted to say. She was very much in love with her Savior, Jesus, and her family. She raised two successful, wonderful sons, and she adored them. I always felt that she was anxious to bond with her, the women that God put around her, whoever they were. Sometimes they were believers like her, sometimes not, because she did live in a house full of men. And I'm sure she was really happy when she got to have a daughter-in-law and loved having Olivia there with her. She was unflappable, yet she was always animated, and it wasn't that she was a flat line at all, but you just couldn't get her upset. At least I didn't see her very upset. She was relatable to everyone who was around her. She was very submissive to God, and she would go anywhere, do anything that he told her to do. She was, on the other hand, a very independent woman. She traveled all over the world, sometimes, a lot of times, all by herself. And she was just a great role model for many of us. The time with Raija was always too brief. This life on this earth is always just a moment in time. She was a loving, dear woman that cannot be replaced on this earth. I look forward to spending eternity with her and all of our departed loved ones. If you can hear me, Raija, thank you for all you taught me on this earth. I love you, and I love your family. We're praying for you. Now here's my husband.
Hi, I'm Bill, and I, like Gloria, want to say thank you so much for the honor of being part of this service for Raija. It was a great privilege to be the pastor for this family for a number of years, and such a privilege for us to share a little bit in this service of an amazing, one-of-a-kind, absolutely unique and unforgettable woman. Forgive me if I pay a lot of attention to my notes, because I'll be more brief if I do that. There's just so many things I could say. As all of you know, Raija was a wife and a mother who always spoke of her husband and her sons with great love and great pride. When we asked about Milton or the boys, she was eager and took great pleasure in telling us about what was happening in their lives, their careers, their ministries. And I can never, ever remember hearing her say even a single negative word about any of them. And then, of course, when Olivia came into Jason's life, she was just thrilled. But Raija was also a global traveler. From the first time we met the Amayun family, we said, this is the most international family we have ever met in our lives. They were amazing. Raija was comfortable traveling anywhere in the world, whether the United States or the Philippines, her native Finland, Africa, Thailand, wherever God called or her family needed, she went across oceans like you and I would cross the street. What an amazing thing. A medical practice on one continent and family and friends and ministries on other continents. But Raija was also humble. In spite of her evident intellect, her academic degrees, her achievements, her medical career, Raija was never prideful, never condescending, never self-promoting. After they moved away from Muskegon as their primary residence and would come back to visit either as a family or just she and Milton or just Raija by herself, when they came to church, I noticed that they or she always, after the service, hung back. And they waited until everyone else had finished who wanted to talk to their pastor or their pastor's wife, and only then would they step forward and we'd have a wonderful time of reunion and great conversation together. It was always others before self. Perhaps the most important and core thing about Raija was that she was Jesus' disciple. She was a lifelong learner and student. She was very bright, very curious, constantly reading, asking questions, watching Bible teaching videos. But though many of them were theological in nature, it was never so she could become a theologian. She wasn't interested in theology and Bible interpretation so that for their own sake, just kind of to fill her head. No. It was always about how to follow Jesus and how to live according to Jesus' example and teachings, to love people and to share Jesus with them. I thought about what Charles Spurgeon, the great London preacher, once said about John Bunyan. He said you could prick him anywhere and his blood flowed bibline. Well, that was Raija. She loved the scriptures, and especially she loved Jesus, whose story the scriptures tell. This is special to me. Raija was a Finlander. This is special to me because my mother was 100% Finnish. My mom was born into an immigrant Finnish community on Drummond Island in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. In the home, she was required to speak Finnish, as she lived in a rugged log cabin out in the woods. But Raija reminded me so much of my mother, not just because of her Finnish accent, but also, even more so, because of her godly life and her passionate pursuit of Jesus and her passion to share Jesus with other people. That was my mom, and Raija just constantly reminded me of her. Raija was generous. She seemed to take great pleasure, imagine, in kindly taking us out for a meal, almost every time she was back in the States and in Muskegon. And she always brought us gifts. Mine were always from Finland. Often it was Finnish candy, yes, or cough drops. But much more important than that, Raija loved to give generously to the compassionate causes that she believed in. One more. Raija was loving. Her perpetual smile projected a loving welcome to anyone and everyone without exception, without expectation. In so many ways, Raija was a Proverbs 31 woman. In that famous chapter from the Bible, we read this: "A wife of noble character who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her works bring praise to her in the city gate." Milton and Joshua, Jason and Olivia, we love you, deeply respect you, and thank you so much for generously sharing Raija with us.